Welcome to everyone that's here now. We said from 12, but we used to start 5 past. So yeah, it's super fun to talk about the topic today. And we think it will be a really good discussion between Petter and Jonas. And we have some good questions from our clients and from one of you who signed up. So I think it will be a really good and nice hour together now.
For sure. Cool, but then I will share the screen.
Yeah. So the topic for today is how to optimize your stock levels and grow online sales. And today's speakers is Petter from Madden Analytics and Jonas from Keywordio. So the agenda is that Jonas will talk about the impact of stock levels and the pricing on digital marketing. And Petter will continue with assortment forecasting and optimizing stock levels. And then we will have a Q&A in the end. And then we have a really nice offer from one of our clients, Komplett Företag, that I'm pretty sure that none of you want to miss. So it's good if you can stay there all hour. So yeah, let's jump in. Do you want to do a short introduction first?
Yeah.
Petter, you go.
Yeah, sure. So I work for a company called Madden Analytics, and we work with as it's looking on the name, data analytics software for consumer brands, focusing on inventory planning and forecasting. I'm from Stockholm. I live on Södermalm with my wife and 2 daughters.
Nice. And Jonas from Keywordio. I also have 2 kids at home, one daughter and 1 little son. So I guess we have the same challenges and fun things at home, right? I'm also a big fan of analytics, but more from the marketing perspective and driving sales. And that's typically my day job, to help large e-commerce stores grow sales in Scandinavia and Europe and globally as well. And yeah, super happy to have you here, Petter, today. And I know it's going to be a great webinar, and hope you will get a lot of new ideas and thoughts on this.
Yes, and I think we meet a lot of clients, so it's super important to stay updated and in how you should think about demand and supply, especially since it's quite common with lack of a connection to the supply chain. So I think let's start.
So Keywordio, what we do, we're really, if you summarize it in one sentence, we are really the future performance marketing agency. What does that really mean? Is that we help companies grow by optimizing paid search, paid social, and creative content. For example, what type of content should you actually have when you run TikTok ads, for example? And of course, in the end, how do you actually build loyalty with market automation? So those are the 4 core marketing services that we help our customers with. Yeah, that's in short what we do at Keywordio.
Great. And Madden Analytics, as I mentioned, we provide software for consumer brands, especially within sports, fashion, and footwear. Software to improve data analytics and inventory planning. So we help them forecast sales and stock on each individual article in a simple way, and we focus a lot on bridging powerful data models and user input to make it really easy to use, and our services plug and play to existing systems such as e-com platforms, POS, ERP, and so on. So easy to get started with and easy to use.
So if we summarize the challenges we see today from a marketing perspective, and like Clara said, like what we're looking at today is how to actually combine supply and demand, which is like demand generation is the main purpose of marketing, right? Is that we see for everyone who tries to work on growing online sales, you have 3 clear challenges today. You have increased cost per click. Doesn't matter if you run ads on TikTok, Meta, or Google Ads. Typically, cost per click goes up year over year. Competence. It's typically a challenge to actually retain competence, key competence in your company. because we see it. If you have a performance marketing manager or performance marketing team, it's quite often that they change job within 1, 2, or 3 years. And then just if you don't touch, for example, Meta business for 6 months, for example, it's going to be a lot of new features when you log in again, right? So the competence level to stay up to date on what is actually happening is a big challenge. And then the third part is really the product margin and the pricing, because you have more global companies offering more marketplaces. And of course, all of these three forces, they need to be managed on top of facing privacy challenges. So you do it in a way that is good for the future and in a privacy safe way. So that is what we see. This is not something that's going to go away. This will only be a bigger challenge for the future. But tying this into the supply and demand. So Petter, you will speak a lot more about how to actually work on forecasting stock levels in the future and how to be smart with that. But I think when we were preparing the content for today, we realized that maybe the main topic here is to actually talk about how to collaborate between supply team, if that is organizational under the financial team or the purchasing department, together with a e-com team or the performance marketing team. Because from the marketing perspective, there's a lot of interesting lead indicators that you can use and educate the supply team and how to use in terms of the forecast. So for example, from the marketing team, you probably know quite fast on the click-through rate looks promising or not for Google Shopping, for example. And why is this so hard? Of course, you have large assortments, many products. You can also have multiple markets. You can have seasonal effects, for example, and all of this needs to be addressed. And I think it's very rare that the performance team has insights about real stock levels, burn down on them, and actually indications on are we overstocked or are we understocked. So that's going to be really interesting to hear your thoughts on that later. And of course, should you actually push more marketing, or should you actually draw back and save that money for something else in terms of what's the common goal for the purchasing team and the marketing team, for example? So when we look at the marketing budget, of course, we try to take a step back and look from a customer perspective, like where they are in the customer journey. I mean, top funnel activities like videos on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, following up based on video views is just a common way to actually be more proactive higher up in the funnel. And then when it comes down to more of the details in terms of feed-based ads that we use, could be catalog ads, collections ads, or smart shopping later in the funnel. But there are a lot of interesting and key things that will have effect on the performance marketing side here. So before we look into that, I think it's also important to think about like what type of company you are. So if you are an IKEA company with a lot of different categories, they're selling everything from kitchens to glasses to really seasonal effects, like what should you have in your terrace, for example, compared to if you're Gymshark, direct-to-consumer brand that just sell products for the fitness industry. There's a lot of different ways how you should assess the assortment and how to predict the assortment and what to target. And if you look into, for example, IKEA, like always, like with the funnel as well, like try to think like a customer looking at how do IKEA segment the assortment. Of course, the customer probably look at it, well, I want to have a new kitchen. Then you look at it from the room perspective. But it could also be what is trending right now. So, for example, what is about the outdoor space that I should push, for example. So what is right now, for example. So those are just a couple of examples of how to like top level segment the assortment and think about it from a customer perspective, not what is easiest to filter in a Google spreadsheet, for example. And the Gymshark example is as well, right? They sell fitness clothes, and it could be maybe based on sports. It could be what is trending right now, or it could be what the latest drop will be. So they maybe have a core collection, and they have new drops coming out all the time. So having a smart way of filtering this based on looking at the performance marketing data is very important. So if you're a performance marketing manager or e-com manager, maybe you get an email from somebody in the board, for example, like, why is the ROAS down on Google Shopping right now, for example? Or maybe you get this email. It says, yes, our revenue is up year over year on Google Shopping, and I think this is doesn't matter if you get the negative or the positive. But there's a lot of things that affects this, but you will talk a lot about it later as well, right? What affects the performance on marketing, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's interesting to me also how the KPIs connect to each other across the departments in a company too, right? That growth rate at Google Shopping is of course an important metric for the marketing team, but it's also highly dependent on the supply chain team, for example, is performing. And I see meet a lot of companies where the bridge between those departments are not working entirely perfect. And I think it's a lot of improvement possibilities in between them in making each other's jobs easier by sharing the right information.
Yeah. I mean, for example, if you're comparing year over year and you have 30% less stock levels or 30% less products compared to last year in the most important category during this season, there's not going to be anything that you can actually do in terms of like making major leaps in Google Ads just to solve that. And that is something you, of course, should be aware of, and also should be able to signal early on that from the Google Ads perspective, hey, we see an increase in demand here. We have this effect. We know it from last year, and of course, that should also be sent back to the purchasing team. So having those communications between the teams is very important. So what is really affecting the shopping performance? So here we have 6 areas, and assortment, sales, price, marketing, brand, and user experience. And today we are focusing on assortment segmentation, sales or campaign periods, and then price point. And if you look at assortment, like we said, stock levels, where you are on this burn down chart, have you just released this product, for example, or are you actually in the end tail of it, and how you should actually work with the marketing based on that. How to be smart on setting up campaigns. So what can you actually do before the real campaign starts? What type of experiments can you actually run even before you start the real campaign? So you actually know what will perform the best based on lead indicators. And the price point. Continuously experiment with price. We hear a lot from customers to say that, yeah, we have a lot of data, but we don't really know how to use it in a smart way. So the pricing part is one of the parts is, of course, the always on, sort of the core assortment that is just always running. I mean, if you look at IKEA, they have a lot of parts of the assortment that just continuously run. But then, of course, you have the part for the terrace, for example, or outdoor, which is going to be highly seasonal affected, right? And then you have the campaign periods. Maybe you do something during Black Week, for example, or maybe you have 2 sales period always during every year. Then you need to address those in a different way and forecast demand differently. So if we start with the price comparison, we see a lot of brands that do price analysis on their assortment, and it's typically done by, you have somebody from finance or purchase, they have a scraper, and they try to match part of the assortment compared to 3 to 5 competitors, or they look into, for example, price comparison sites like Price Runner, like where are we in terms of the average price compared to our competitors. But what we see is a very interesting way is to actually look more into the click-weighted price. So, for example, here if you see a Google Shopping result, you see, for example, the Bugaboo Fox 2, for example, you have a lot of different prices here. The click-through rate, which means that if you have seen the product and somebody have clicked on it, it's going to be very different based on the price. And it's a really good early indicator in terms of how this price point performs. And that's why the click-weighted price is something that we see is very important to educate the purchasing team on, and also educate them how to use it and make sure to enable that data, because just giving Google Ads access will probably not solve it, but you can definitely educate the team and then set out data streams so they have access to it. They can work with the prediction models in terms of where are you in terms of the price point currently. So the click-weighted price, you can do analysis like that. Every point here is a product, and the size of the product is the revenue. So if you have a big bubble here, then you have a high revenue. And then you can plot that versus click-weighted price and compare that to return on ad spend, for example. It could be cost of sales, it could be profit on ad spend, it could be anything that is the key metric for you. But let's say that you're selling iPad Pro, for example, and they have two different price points. You can also segment here that in the B sector, we have products that are lower priced compared to the competition, but it seems like the return on ad spend is not that great here. So there is a reason why the customers don't buy this from you, or it's very expensive for you to sell. And that is something, maybe you should skip spending money on this because it's not working that well. Then in the C sector, here you have a good price or a low price compared to the competitors. Maybe there's an option here to actually, if products are not that price sensitive, maybe you can increase the price and keep the same volume on these products, for example. Or in the third A sector, here we actually high priced, but it's a good return on ad spend on this one. So here there's probably opportunity to grow and to adjust pricing based on this. So having these kind of insights and working with the sourcing team to optimize this is a great opportunity, really. So depending on what categories we're talking about, I mean, one of the things how people estimates the value how price sensitive you are. If you go into a grocery store today, you probably don't know the average price for all products in that store, but you probably know what the milk costs, for example. So then the milk category is an important category to estimate the price sensitivity, for example. And if I go into my local grocery store, I have maybe 20 different versions of milk. I can buy the ecological friendly one. I can buy the ones with lactose free, for example. And the price range or the price ladder on this, it's going to be quite wide. So having a price ladder and working with that on key parts of the assortment is a really important thing. And also depending on the stock burn down chart. So if you have things that are about to go out of stock, maybe you can experiment with those in the lower part of the pricing ladder, for example. So that's just a great opportunity to being great on identifying these assortment categories, like with IKEA Room, for example, and then build the pricing ladder for them. So why is this so important? And it's a continuously test and learn. Like, can you answer the question is like, if we increase or decrease 5% on price, do you know what effect you will have on the sales numbers? And maybe it's a hard question to answer for a whole assortment, but if you take that for a key part of the assortment, it's an important question to be able to answer. And the only way to do that is to continuously run experiments to evaluate what's the effect on, for example, click-through rate based on price, for example. And what segments of the assortment is price sensitive and where it is not price sensitive? So where can you increase the prices without having a negative effect on volume, for example? That's also a great opportunity to work on solving that. And the increase of this pricing ladder, of course, it's about trying to optimize the overall target. And is that revenue growth, or is it margin optimization, for example? And working with the supply team to solve this. So if you're like talking about more top funnel activities to drive marketing, I mean, if you look at BMW, for example, they do more of the push on the premium segment. That's the way to get people's attention, to get them in, like I said, in the pricing ladder, because that's builds their brand, right? They're not going to show a low cost product, but in the end, what do you really buy? It's going to be not everyone who goes in and just buy the iX, for example, because that's going to be a high price product that actually is more about branding than actually driving sales. So it's more of a top funnel activity. So when it comes to the offers and the seasonality and how to be smart with sales season, there's a lot of different ways how you can run these different packages. You can do discounts, you can do first purchase offers, you can do buy one get one free, and here trying to figure out what works the best for your assortment and continuously learning and build that playbook for long term is really the key. And sometimes maybe you need to push more for marketing, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to stop marketing and just let the product run out of itself in the end of the stock curve, for example. So the demand forecast can, of course, be very difficult for some brands. I mean, if you're selling iPhones, you know that you're going to have a high spike in interest for iPhones when Apple released their new products. And of course, this needs to be accounted for when you have those. But should you run all the ads during these times, or should you pick part of the assortment? And what part should you do is something you need to continuously evaluate and experiment on. So what you can do for that is that, for example, if you have a sales season, you can do 2 weeks before that sales is going to start, you can do an A/B test. So you can pick, for example, you want to do 2 versions of a product, and then you can see, like, with a price point that is close to or even on the actual where you want to push this on the sales season, and then evaluate the click-through rate, for example, here. Then you can probably also see what product is trending more now and what is more interesting, because it's really something that you can learn a lot about before you go into this offer and this time. So if you have a lot higher click-through rate on the iPad Pro, of course, that is something you really want to push then for the actual sales time that you will do. And of course, in the end, after the sales period, make sure to remove and lower your bids on the marketing side, so you don't overspend based on just a spike in the sales data, for example. So doing smart experiments before, pick the most prominent offers that is trending right now, and then go with them during the sales period and push them more on site in offers and be more proactive with them. So really aligning the targets between supply and demand, like connecting the sales budget to the P&L and to a traffic budget, and also to the inventory plan. Do we have inventory enough to hit these targets? And do we have traffic enough to hit this target? And do we have the average order value and the conversion rate that we believe we need to have to run this? I mean, making sure that those 4 key things are connected, and that everyone in the team have an understanding, at least, of what is the relationship between price point and the performance on the performance marketing side is a very important thing. So Petter, take it more into assortment and forecasting and how to when the marketing is down, how to combine it.
Happy to. So first of all, why we're talking about this? I mean, generally, I mean, inventory planning and supply chain is a topic that's really close to my heart, so I like talking about it. But essentially, business-wise, poor inventory planning leads to either missed sales or overstock, and both are really bad for business. Misses is you miss the growth that you could have had, and overstock means you have to have products in clearance or not sell them at all. And in our point of view, or our approach to what to do about it is essentially the combination of powerful data models and automation of data feeds combined with the user knowledge. That typically sits a lot of knowledge in teams with regards to assortment strategy, what's a commercial product and what is not, and so on. And to combine those two, the kind of art and science combination is what we think is the most powerful way to handle it. And the result is obviously higher margins, allows for better growth and less climate impact, because overstock is, for the fashion industry as an example, is it's a big problem, having overstock that's not relevant for sales anymore, and it has a big climate impact. So why is inventory planning so difficult? First of all, it's a lot. It's many articles to actually work with. I mean, just looking at footwear as an example, one style might come in 5 different colors. Each color has 10 different sizes, and it's in the number of individual articles. It stocks up, and brands can have to manage thousands of articles, and you need to forecast every individual article because you need to buy them at article level, and this becomes even more complex given that companies often have long lead times. You need to make a decision on how many units to buy 6 or 12 months ahead when you're actually going to sell the product, and it's difficult to make forecasting over such time horizon. That together with that, the input data can be really complex. You have the marketing spend, you have the overall budgets, you have the current inventory, the purchase orders that are already made, seasonality and so on. It's a lot of factors combined to actually make a solid forecast. You need a robust model to actually work with this. It's so many data inputs and so many articles to actually do it manually. Is typically a risk of not being sophisticated enough in how you work with it. So how we like to approach the inventory planning is essentially in 3 different steps. So first of all, the long-term perspective. You need to set the plans and forecasts very early on in order to actually make the purchase towards production or suppliers. And this is a big bet, right? It has a huge effect on cash flow. I mean, it's a common challenge in direct consumer brands they have to tie up a lot of capital and goods early on, and it's a big risk that they're not actually going to sell that well. So it's important to have a solid baseline plan. Secondly, rigorously follow up on this plans when you actually start to sell the product. And let that guide step number 3, how you actually work with that in system. Restocking is one action, and activation in terms of marketing and pricing and so on is another. I'm going to come back to these different steps. So if we start with the first one, I want to talk a little bit about setting those early stage plans with as many considerations as possible. And I'm going to illustrate this a little bit, like how you actually want to forecast the stock over time. We call it the stock burn down. So how much you plan or want to have in stock for each given time period. And typically, I mean, if the sales cycle is a season, the summer season, you typically want pretty few units left in stock in September, for example. And that plan is set well ahead, and it needs to be aligned with your targets, first of all. I mean, what is your sales budget over time? What is the marketing spend that's fitting into that? And then you want to, on an article level, factor in things like seasonality, what stage a product is in its life cycle, major campaigns or price reductions that you want to have over time, and ensure to use historical data in the best possible way. It's typically a lot of good data in there, but it needs to be cleaned and recalibrated to actually reflect true historical demand. And whether it's a new product or an existing product is going to have as a carryover, there's a lot of good data there to capture things like seasonality and size curves and so on to make the best guess on what's going to happen on the long term ahead. And like I mentioned earlier on, we see the most powerful combination is when you have robust statistical modeling and good quality data as input in combination with the team's perspective and intuition and assortment strategy and brand strategy and so on. And combining those is when you get the best baseline plans to work with. Then at some point this product is going to sell in the market, right? And that's where you start to get early signals on how it's actually performing in relation to this plan. The bunch of KPIs that you can look at to actually track this. We recommend looking at how things are performing versus the actual plan. It's a good metric because if you stick to plan, a lot of operations can become easier. But I can also look at metrics such as stock out coverage. How long are we going to have this product given the current velocity? But as the data comes in, it's important to recalibrate the forecasts too, right? Because then you have more information that you have when actually maybe in initial sales plan, but reforecasting outlooks continuously is important to understand where it's heading. And doing that, you can get early signals if you're going to end up with overstock. So in the illustration, the upper curve, we can read early signals and say we're likely to end up with a lot of stock that's going to need to go to clearance or outlets or whatever, and that gives us one signal, right? And the lower curve, maybe things are trending faster than we could. Really important signal too that here we have a probability of missing sales that we could have actually had, or we need to plan ahead for getting a new product in there instead with similar product or and so on. And when we're talking about thousands of articles, this is where it becomes even more important with automation, right? Because it's really difficult to do this in a big Excel spreadsheet or if you have weak solutions and so on to actually continuously reevaluating the forecasts and continuously tracking things how going versus plan. And you want to do this in real time to get the signals as early as possible.
And I think also from the marketing team, like there's a lot of valuable insights from a performance team to actually have insights where we are on this burn down chart on key categories and maybe that is down as into product, but just like we talk about, I mean, educating both team about what you need to know, so you can have the key insights and knowing that. I think that's very important.
Yes, because essentially this recalibrated forecast of each individual article educates how you want to work with the demand side of your operations, and the demand generation needs to be in synchronization with the supply outlook. And I mean, these products are going slower than we thought and are likely to end up in overstock. That's where they might need a little bit help. And that's why we believe in spending the marketing money where it's needed. It might be obvious, but it's not always done in practice. But wherever you can avoid overstock to end up with too much volumes for a clearance period, it's highly desirable, right? And on the other side, when products are going slower than you expected, if you read the signals early enough and have a pretty smooth supply chain with maybe a little bit lower, shorter lead times, you might be able to restock, not to miss sales. Or it's a situation where you can actually take home the profits. So don't overspend in marketing on products that are selling anyways. And it's a little bit balanced between ROAS and EBIT that here we don't need help to actually sell this product. So it's better to take home the profits, even increase price if it's such product category. But the outlook of where we're going to end up is really important to guide how you're pushing demand of both. So And I mean, I'm going to take a few examples of highly respected companies, but it's more illustrative. But you constantly see Googling things, and you're actually pushed to a product where it's pretty much out of stock anyways, and this is a product that's in season right now. I'm pretty sure such an e-commerce player would have products that would need more help. But other examples where we actually push to products that are not sellable at all, totally out of stock, and might have, it might be the BMW of this situation, but this is an example of where marketing money is spent on articles that don't really need that help in order to drive sales.
But it's a nice shirt.
It's a nice shirt. It's a very nice shirt. So it might be, a bridge to other nice shirts.
Exactly. Which is actually one thing that I think it's a great aspect as well of this. Like in the end of the stock part, when you're getting lower, I mean, if you find that some products are very price sensitive, and it could also be an opportunity to drive low cost traffic, because if you can have a very good price point, it might be that you can drive cheaper traffic because you have a high click-through rate on those. So it could be an opportunity in terms of like running marketing more efficiently if you have that kind of assortment, for example. But then you need to make sure that you have great upsell on, or actually recommendations on other products, for example. I mean, depending on what type of customer behavior you have and price sensitivity, it could be an option for buying cheaper traffic.
A few principles that we like to think about in the relation between demand generation and supply. First of all, like we talked about, the long-term perspective, and account for as much as possible as you actually can on the long-term perspective, such as seasonality, campaigns, price adjustments, and so on, but put it on a manageable level of detail. It can often harm more than help to try to use every single data point. Is it raining in China and so on? Because it's only going to make it too complex, and you're going to forget to read the right signals. I should actually work with the data sets. Secondly, might sound super obvious, but ensure stock to sell if you're going to have a campaign, not only for that specific campaign, but also what does the demand actually look like afterwards, to ensure that you're not spending too much on things that would have sold anyways. And that's, now I just actually said the last point, that it's really expensive with traffic, so don't spend it where you don't need to, because if you have solid solutions such as Madden Analytics to work with the demand forecasting, you will have a good idea what actually looks like on the long perspective. Cool.
So the Q&A session. So we have received a couple of questions from you before. So let's go through them.
Yeah, and one question that we heard a lot is that many people have a lot of data, but they don't know how to use it. So what do you say about that?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, it's a good question. I think it's really common to have that challenge. I think it's important to understand what data points is really important to use, and that can be like one-off analysis, but actually has a correlation to outcomes, such as marketing spend is an important driver of sales, or availability, or to identify those data points that really matters and focus on them at the first. So even though we have loads of data, it's not necessarily operationally possible to use all of it, because that's gonna lower the quality of using every single data point. I mean, I think it's important to focus on the right ones. Software is another obvious example, right? that the more data points, the more complex it's going to be to run analysis in Google Sheets or Excel or Tableau, but to actually have automated analysis, data cleaning, and so on, so to make it easy to use, easy to actually use the data points that you have.
And I would just say, I mean, data without the context or data without the understanding doesn't mean anything. And that's where I see when we have done projects actually doing educations for the supply side or the purchasing team, that always turns out really good, because if we can increase the understanding of for each team, that will be improving how to collaborate. So I think data without understanding or context, at the end, it doesn't mean anything. So I think that's very important as well.
Yeah, and I think that quite naturally leads us into the next question, which is that many companies are testing a lot, but it feels like they don't have a structured way of doing it. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it comes down to what you said as well, that you have to have a solid model how to predict things, because if you predict and then compare to that plan, then you can learn and be better on predicting things. So I mean, having that framework and structure is something I think is very important, and I see that it's very few companies that actually does this continuously. So that's at least how I see it.
And I mean, for me, number one in terms of getting structure around testing is ensuring the right KPIs to actually measure things. And it needs to be the same thing as the previous point, that it needs to be simple enough so you can measure it in a good way. Because it really is just try around things and afterwards try to retrofit them into the initial hypothesis. But being strict around the process of testing, like how are we going to run tests, what is the desired outcome, how do we measure that, is a baseline to actually get structure around it.
Yeah, and I think something that we see a lot, almost every day with all teams we're working with, is that the different teams from supply, purchasing, and finance doesn't have understanding of demand and digital marketing, and the other way around. I think that's, yeah, we see that every day almost.
Yeah, I think it's very common.
Yeah,
very common, because it's very complex. Each niche is very complex, and I think it's of course somebody who's been working 10 or 15 or 20 years within supply, of course they have a lot of knowledge that it's going to be impossible just to transfer. But I think making sure to summarize the key insights and align around common targets and share insights is really the key.
I totally agree, and I think even more dangerous than not having an understanding for each other's work is being counterproductive in what you do. And in my point of view, I mean, getting an understanding of how you can actually help each other is a really good foundation. I mean, we looked at this one, right? This is a simple illustration of how big the impact of each other's work actually is. I mean, if you push products that are going to run out of stock soon, the ROAS will obviously go down. But to not end up with overstock, which is an important metric for the supply team, you might need help from the marketing team to activate things. And I would say it's important to find those common grounds in what kind of information do you want to share in between each other to actually help each other's work, because that's going to give a bigger understanding of how you can actually support each other, and it can be really simple, but like lists of what products or what categories are going strong or weak right now. Where do we need marketing from? And the other way around, from marketing, that probably has the best idea of price elasticity. So to actually play that in for long-term planning, and we're going to decrease the price of 10% of this article. What is that impact of volume increase? from such a price adjustment is fantastic input for a supply chain that needs to quantify the buying quantities on the long time period. So finding those common grounds and how we can help each other, I think is a very good start to build that bridge in between those disciplines.
For sure.
Good answer. And next question is, why are so few companies proactive in their low stock levels?
Yeah,
That one's for you.
I don't know if it's fair to those companies, but this answer is that it's really difficult, right? I mean, we talked about. I mean, if you're going to buy sneakers in low stock levels, they might have done that quantification 6 months ago, and there's no way of getting more volumes in stock enough in time. And so this answer is really difficult, and there is a lot you can actually do in terms of allocating to markets or warehouses or if you have physical stores and so on, which is less difficult. But I would say companies typically try to be proactive, but it's not an easy task. Then as a customer, it's also how you actually experience those low stock levels. Is like the examples we showed. You totally get that experience, right? If you push the products that are out of stock, it's not a good customer experience. So that's an example where you would want to push the customer somewhere else, where they could actually, buy the products that they're targeted with. But that's not the stock level per se, but rather what do we show products in stock. Same thing with physical retail, right? If you only have the shirt in extra large, maybe you shouldn't have it on the rack, because the customer is going to be disappointed if they come in and ask for a medium.
Yeah, and I think the next question is not one right answer, but how many refills should be used during a product life cycle?
Yes. I would rather talk about product life cycle can be 7-8 years, right? So then you would obviously buy it multiple times, but maybe rather in one sales cycle, like a season, a summer season. Unfortunately, many companies will not be able to buy things because of the lead times. If it's swimwear, for example, the window might be very narrow. It might be a couple of months where they sell, and then it's going to be tight to actually make another production run to restock those products. But companies that are successful in consumer goods with all the times, if you could at least buy twice in a season, that helps a lot, right? It helps. Cash flow, of course, that's not having one huge batch and that you need to pay up front and then hopefully sell it to the season, but rather have one batch to get the early signals and then another batch to meet the demand that you've been able to recalibrate with initial sales data. That's fantastic if you can manage that and to set up the supply chain in a way that would allow that. I think it's a very big benefit if you manage. So it might be, for example, that you can buy the garments beforehand or the fabrics and so the different sizes at the later stage when you calibrate the new size level, or buy the subcomponents, but the full way. But so ideally, you would be able to do it more than once. In the multi-brand context, it's different because then you can buy from suppliers that might have stock, and there you can reorder in season if the supplier would have it. But it's essentially the same challenge because the supplier needs to forecast that instead on a long timeline.
But I think it's also maybe it's an opportunity for a shared goal for the supply and the demand team, or the purchasing and the marketing team. I mean, a shared goal would, for example, be forecasting accuracy for example, on the sales plan. And if you get both teams to collaborate on really, it's about trying to accurate forecast and actually try to solve this, because hopefully you have a lot of smart people in the team, right? And it might be that you can improve this forecast from marketing side based on some input signal that you see has a high correlation, for example, with accuracy later. So I mean, setting a shared goal on accuracy is a good thing, even to continuously working on that, not just hitting the sales target and do year-over-year growth, right? So.
And Zalando, I don't know if they work that way anymore, but earlier on they were famous for being addicted to their sales burnout curves. To this Nike Air Force One, we're going to sell it over a 6-week window, and it's going to sell at this velocity in any given time, and really work as a team around that to optimize following that curve. Because if you can follow those plans, it means so much for operations to be able to give space in the warehouses, give space on site, link to marketing and so on. And I think they were famous to do it really well in terms of being really looking at that burnout continuously and optimizing for it together.
Good. And the last question for today: the core collection versus drop on trending segments in assortments. What's your thoughts on that?
I would say core collections and drops or very lower volume products. They're very different roles in assortment, right? And it's very different how different companies work with this. But typically, I would say it's the ultimate goal is a combination of both. The core collection is something that your customer continuously recognizes you on, and maybe your hero pieces that you can operations can run really smooth on them, and you have a lot of historical data to analyze and so on, which makes them pretty great in terms of supply chain, in terms of quantifications, in terms of profit margins and so on. But having a continuous newness in the assortment is might not be as profitable, might be super difficult to quantify, it might be low gross margins and so on, but it's still really important in terms of driving traffic, in terms of driving brand, and so on, and also in terms of quantifications. And there are great ways to actually quantify those as well, if you understand the assortment well enough, and having that continuous stream of new articles makes the customer want to come back and check out the site once a week and so on. So it's a very good way of organically driving the customer to you and building that relationship.
And I mean, from a marketing perspective, I just completely agree that it's just that from the funnel, just continuously getting a reason to speak and getting people to come back and be interested. I mean, that's how you build the brand, build interest about it. It will probably not optimize your conversion rate long term, but that is probably not the goal if you build the long-term growth, right? If you get people to come back every week because they are interested and care about your brand, it's going to drive your conversion rate down, but you will get them when they have the right products for you. So
an obvious example is Hermes, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a customer myself, but they probably make 90% of their revenues on scarves and bags, which they've had around for ages, and they don't need to market them because there's constant demand for them. But they still also need the collection to express the brand, and if they only have the bags and scarves, they probably wouldn't be where they are today. So they're probably fine with losing loads of money on a dress that costs a lot of money and they make really bad margin, but that's fine because keeps attracting the customer and it drives traffic to selling those cars that they can have as cash cows continuously. But I mean, I think the benchmark I've seen in fashion, as an example, is that a lot of companies aspire to have like 60% of sales on returning items or carryovers that they have from season to season. They might not take as much as of the visual space, digital or physical shopping window, but it's operationally wise and profitable wise pretty nice to have a big share of it.
Yep. We have one more question. So we have a theoretical question on pricing. So isn't a strong market PR signal if a company stage, this means our product are the most expensive of the market, here's why, and knowing the product are unique?
Okay, so the question is that so if you have a high price on a product,
yeah,
it also states that your brand is I mean, having a high price point. So you're like Apple, they are pricing their products high, right?
Yeah.
So they have pricing power in their space, right?
Yeah.
I think I would like to tie that question back to like, what's your milk? Because like if you have, let's say that the milk category, or let's say that you have the Apple category in desktop computers, for example. If you have the strategy like Apple to have that, they also have a quite long tail as well, right? Because the price ladder within computer is actually, they are continuously phasing out their older models. And if you look at their phones, there's going to be more products coming further down. They are not going to push them on the main page, but you can look further down to have them. So I agree that is an important thing to make sure that you keep pushing your price up to show that you're a quality brand, because high price also signals that you have quality products. But working with the pricing ladder, stretch that out and be smart with the visual merchandise setup. So you sort of have that, so you don't lose that opportunity in the lower range as well. Yeah. That's what I would say. I don't know.
Yeah, and there are companies that are proud of having the most expensive price on the exact same article too, right? Because there's more to it than the physical product. Example being customer service, delivery time, return policy, and so on, which is, say, online pharmacists that you would probably be willing to pay a really high premium for getting deliveries and so on. So there's more to it than price, and I can actually signal with the price that we know we're more expensive, but we also give you X, Y, Z. So it's a little bit with regards to what are you actually selling over the actual physical product.
Yeah, and I mean, pricing is not about lowering price. It can be like, how can we find the ones that are price insensitive and actually work on increasing the prices as well, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Bengt, for the question.
Great.
Should we continue to
yes,
the offer? So big thank you to Komplett Företag, which now gives you 50% off everything. So that's perfect if you need to buy new computers or anything to the office, or maybe a small summer gift for your employees. So with the code Keywordio, that gives you 50%.
That's great.
Amazing.
A great code. And big thanks to our customer Komplett Företag on that. So
and thank you, Petter.